Well, hello and welcome back. My name is Colleen, and if this is the first time that we're meeting, I want to welcome you to this channel. Today I will be doing some canning, and I've got a large bag. Well, I'm not sure how much it weighs, but I have a bag of beets here, and I intend to make some pickled beets. And I hope that you will come back and join me. This is a really simple process, and if you're new to it, this might help you get started. So I will gather up the rest of the stuff and get back to you in a moment. Well, it turns out that for this segment, I don't need an awful lot of ingredients, so I am going to get right to it. So the beets that I have in this bag are some of them are pretty large. I guess that one's the size of a baseball. I'm not really going to do anything to the beets at this point, because I'm going to put them into the pressure canner, and I'm just going to cook them in the pressure canner using the pressure cook function. So I noticed that there's some blemishes on them, and I'm not going to worry about those or the ends or anything until they've been cooked, because I have to peel them all after the process anyway. So I'm just going to add them to the canner, and I'll bring you over there so that you can see what I'm doing. So here I am over at the pressure cooker. This is a Nesco small batch pressure canner, but it also has a function for slow cook, pressure cook, browning, water bath, and steam. So for big quantities of things, I can cook them right in here under the pressure cook button. So in the bottom of the pot, I have just a little rack that keeps the food right off the bottom. And I'm going to add 4 cups of water, which is more than enough because we're just pressure cooking. Probably 2 cups of water would have been plenty. So now I'm just going to add the beets whole into the canner. Oops. This canner sits right at the edge of my cupboard. And that is pretty much a full load in my canner. And I'm going to turn it around. Hopefully you can see what's going on. Maybe I'll bring you a little closer. So I've closed the lid. I'm going to turn the handle to bring it to close on the canner so that these 2 lines match up. I am going to turn my bobber here at the back, which is my pressure valve. I'm going to turn it to seal, airtight. I'm going to go pressure cook, and I'm going to go 20 minutes. Whoops. And start. Now this machine will just take over, and it will, once it reaches pressure, I'm going to get a beeping sound, and I will see this change to the 20-minute time that I want on there for the pressure cooking, and then it will start the countdown, and then it'll count down 20 minutes. After 20 minutes, I'm going to do a quick release because I don't need them to be cooked more than that, I don't think, although there are a couple bigger ones in there that may not get cooked all the way through. So once they're done and we clean all the skins, etc., off of them, then I will be able to judge how many I have and decide what size I'm going to make them. So I will be back when this process is on to its next step. Okay, the time is up on our pressure canner, and I'm just going to jiggle it around a little bit because when I do a quick release, I know if I don't have it positioned just perfectly, it's going to spray beet juice up my cupboard. So I'm going to try and move it and avoid that. And then I'm going to load them into the sink to cool, where I will come back and show you how easy they are to peel. I've cooled them enough to handle them, and now I'm just working to get the skins off, which you can see come off quite easily. Now, you do have to get, and yes, I am wearing rubber gloves for this process because otherwise I'll end up with bee hands for several days. So I am going to take the tops and tails off, and any parts that seem, you know, that one was a bit scabby, so any parts that seem like they need to be cleaned up, I will clean them up. And yeah, I think that one's looking pretty good. So you do have to handle each beet a few times, because once this process is done, then we are going to cube them up to bite-sized pieces, or the size that's comfortable for our family to eat. But that doesn't take long either. So I will show you that process up next. So we're going to move on to the brine now. I have the beets all skinned and in the bowl. I'll put the brine together, and while it's cooking on the stove, we'll slice the beets and get them into the jars. So in a good heavy bottom pot, we need 1 cup of just 1 cup of water, 2.5 cups of vinegar, white vinegar. Doesn't have to be anything more than 5%. Anything that you would use for pickling. 1, 2.5. There we go. And 1 cup of sugar goes into this. 1 cup of sugar. I'm doing the sweetened version. There's quite a number of versions you can do, including caraway. What am I thinking? This recipe comes from the Bernardin book. So you can just, have a peek there or look it up online. It's not hard to find. So I'm going to put in 1 cup of white sugar. I'll be doing some experimenting in the days to come to find out if these things can stand up to Splenda instead of using so much sugar. Also to the brine, I'm going to add 10 or so cloves, whole cloves, the kind that your grandma used to put in the ham when she was making a ham for a special occasion. And also 2 cinnamon sticks. And I'm going to break these in half. I hope. They're hard to break in half. If they give me any trouble, I will stop. Oh. And that was a really small one, so I'm going to add 1 more. And I'm going to give this a quick stir, and then onto the stove it goes. And we'll start working on cutting the beets and getting them into the jars. Hang in there. Well, despite all my best efforts, I managed to get beet juice up the wall, so I just took a minute to clean that all up, and now I'm going to work on these beets. So I'm just going to cut them into chunks that are, easy to fork and bite. So not too big. My husband and I absolutely love this beet pickle recipe, and sometimes we warm it up to eat it, and sometimes we just eat it cold. It is a pickle, so mostly I think they're intended to be cold, but we do enjoy this as a side, and so sometimes we do warm them up. I don't know if anybody else does that or not, but That's what we do, and we really enjoy them that way. I'm not sure how many jars I'm gonna get out of this bunch of beets, but I have sterilized my jars, and you can see it takes more than one beet, so maybe 4 jars or so. I'd be happy with that. It's a simple water bath method, so the difference between canning beets as a vegetable and canning beets as a pickle is that the pickle has vinegar in it, which helps to level out the acidity and makes it safe. If you try to can beets the traditional method without cooking them for a really long time, maybe 3 hours or so in a water bath canner, you will find that while they appear to can right away, or this has been my experience anyway, probably within 2 or 3 weeks you are going to find that they are losing their seals because there's no acid in them, and the natural sugar in the beets just grows things that it shouldn't in there. So it is okay to do beet pickles this way, not okay to do them as a vegetable this way. So there's one. It took about, I'm not even sure I was talking, maybe 1.5 beets in that one. So I'm going to put the, or maybe it was 2.5. I'm going to put the remainder in the next jar and then move on. So all of these beets seem to be cooked well enough. The smaller ones, of course, because I put them all in the pot at the same time, the smaller ones are softer. I should say also that if you don't have a pressure canner or pot, you know, like an instant pot, you can still do this recipe easily at home. You just put your beets in to cook in your pot on the stove as you normally would. Or better still, wrap them up in tin foil and put them in the oven to roast, which really intensifies the flavor of them, as does putting them in an Instant Pot. But if you don't have one, it's not the end of the world. You can still accomplish this recipe. So, and as you can see, I don't think there's really been anything tricky to it yet. It's fairly simple, and people all over the place have different things they do with their beets. It's pretty versatile, really. I was telling my niece, Brianna, that I was gonna cook beets, and she went, blah, they taste like dirt. I think lots of people feel that way about beets. I am not one of them. I do love beets, and I really love them when they've been slow roasted in the oven and when they're made into beet pickles. So recently well, not recently, you can tell we went earlier this year within our health zone for a trip down to the Quiet Lodge, which is a fantastic little lodge and spa. And one of the items on their menu for a starter is this beet plate. And I ordered it, and it was so good, over the top good. I would definitely have that again on my next visit. Beets are one of the things that our pioneer families grew because they could grow them quite easily and keep them all, for most of the winter anyway. Beets are really good keepers. If you keep them in the cool, dark, they will keep all the way through till spring. I was watching a video recently. Oh my gosh, I wish I could remember the name of the channel right now. I think it's Living Simply Alaska. And they'd had some issue with their underground storage for their root crops and so forth. And so they tried just packing things into 5-gallon pails with shavings, like wood shavings. And she brought some beets out in February, and they were still just perfect. So you can definitely do them for long-term storage. I am going to get more jars filled, but I'm not going to put you through the painful process of watching it all. And I will be back when I'm ready to put the seals on. So I'm just going to grab this brine off the stove. I'm going to run it through my strainer into my large measuring cup so that I can pour the brine onto the jars. I'm going to fill them to within 1 inch of the top. I'm going to use just a plain wooden skewer, nothing fancy, to make sure that there are no excess air bubbles in there. We want to get them out. And sometimes you can see where they are too, and that helps. And then I'm going to wipe the top, make sure it's clean, no debris between it and the seal. I'm going to get one of these hot lids out. And I did put the lids on to boil because I'm only, well, I guess I really didn't have to, because they're going to be put into the water bath canner for 35 minutes for pint-sized jars. So I probably didn't have to, but I'm sometimes a little more won't hurt. So I'm just filling these to the 1 inch mark. Repeat, repeat. So my grandma, on my dad's side of the family, we called her Grandma Allen. Her name was Jenny. We called her Grandma Allen because my mom was also Jenny. So she had, on her farm, she had a large root cellar out back. And we would be delighted when we, no, that's not entirely true. We liked to go out to the root cellar in the summertime, and we wanted to hang out there because it was cool. It was, you know, an in-ground cellar, and so we would go there just to hang out, which would annoy Grandma to no end, because that would mean we were letting hot air into the cold room, and the idea is to keep it cold. But in the wintertime, nobody wanted to go there because you had to traipse down this little narrow trail of snow with your bucket in your hand and get the snow away from the door. And then you would have to go inside the first door, and then there was a second door, of course, because they had a system for keeping the inside temperature more even. So they had a double door system. So you came in the first door and you closed the door behind you, and then you you pulled open the other door and went inside. So kind of, I guess it allowed the air temperature to regulate somehow. But nobody wanted to go then because it was cold and it took a while. So nobody wanted to go then. But we were sure always happy to have things that were fresh in the middle of winter, because there were no trips to the grocery store. So it's not a matter of us being able to just easily go to the grocery store. So I'm going to stop, and I'm probably going to end the video here, but as you can see, I've got to make a little more brine. So this one isn't quite as high as I'd like it to be, and this one has no brine. So pretty close. And just as I was saying goodbye on my camera, the battery died. So I've resorted to my cell phone to do this last little bit of the video so that I could get it all ready to go. I have all my jars filled, so I got 7 jars, which will be a bonus to get into our cupboard because we've been out for quite a while. I just keep watching for good sales on the beets when they come in, and this is what we do with them. So I hope that you've enjoyed today's video. I apologize for the poor lighting, and I hope that you have enjoyed today's video. And if you have, please consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, and give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. And I will be back with another canning video really soon. So take care, everybody. Have a fantastic day. I will talk with you soon. Bye.